Cheers, my friend. Oh, hello, attic dwellers, though we're not dwelling in the attic today. This is our first time sitting together in person since before March. So the fact that we're sitting down together doesn't mean that we're throwing in the towel and saying, no, everything's fine now, we're going back to normal. We've been very
isolated. We have been isolated.
Exactly. So with that out of the way, Dungeons & Dragons started as a sort of a splinter from miniature war games. And there was a miniature war game called Chainmail, developed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, who are the creators of Dungeons & Dragons. And they made sort of a supplement to Chainmail called Dungeons & Dragons,
right,
which was basically like added the fantasy aspects to what was...
wasn't it like war down to, they wanted to bring it down to like individual people or something like that?
Exactly, yeah. Like all those innovations sort of came from those guys. Gygax gets most of the credit for Dungeons & Dragons, but I kind of feel like Arneson deserves a lot more, because Dave Arneson is the one who kind of pioneered the idea of there being a referee or a dungeon master to run things, and he was kind of more the one who would come up with the idea of like running individual characters and having a setting for an ongoing story and that kind of stuff. Gygax, I think initially was more like the nitty-gritty of the rules and stuff.
Okay.
But together, like between the two of them, they created the system.
Right.
So then there was original Dungeons & Dragons, and then after that, it splintered into two things: Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and what is sometimes called like Basic Dungeons & Dragons. And it's split for like, there's this whole legal reason. There's a bunch of shenanigans why it was technically two different games.
What is like a brief, because I don't know as much about, so what is like a brief reason for why they separated it? I always thought it was Advanced was for the people who were looking for more of an advanced game to play, and Basic was for people learning. But is that not really? You'd
think that, but that's not quite accurate. Part of the original agreement, and I'm being kind of broad with this. Part of the original agreement, like between Gygax and Arneson, and when they founded TSR, who were the original creators of Dungeons & Dragons, publishers of Dungeons & Dragons, that Arneson would get a cut of anything that was Dungeons & Dragons.
Okay, like anything just broadly Dungeons & Dragons?
As long as like Dungeons & Dragons was a thing, Arneson got a cut of that.
Okay.
Even after he was no longer part of the company. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was created and considered a separate game.
Okay, so this was a money thing.
Yeah. And the same sort of thing ended up happening to Gygax too. Gygax got screwed out of his own company because there were other partners, and the partners bought up shares, and basically he was made like a minority holder in the game he created or co-created.
It's almost like its own Dungeons & Dragons adventure.
Yeah, it's totally screwed up. So that's like the really rough and loose thing. So technically, AD&D and Basic D&D were considered two separate things, even though they're relatively compatible. And the basic part of Basic Dungeons & Dragons is a little misleading, I think, because Basic D&D actually had a number of like more advanced rules that Advanced Dungeons & Dragons didn't have. Things that were eventually picked up in like the more modern editions, like more advanced rules for like weapon proficiencies and stuff like that. So it wasn't as basic as some people tend to think.
Right.
Anyway, that's a really long-winded way of getting around to the fact that the edition that I used to play were the basic editions.
These were all ones that you owned as a kid, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll go through exactly. All right. So first there was the Dungeons & Dragons set, or the basic Dungeons & Dragons set. Then they revised that, what collectors and retro folks refer to as like BX edition. And
BX?
BX for basic and expert.
Okay.
Because there were two separate box sets. I don't have the original basic box set, but this is the second version expert box set. And see, it came with the Isle of Dread, which is my favorite adventure module of all time, and we're going to be back to this later today. And the expert rulebook, which you can see was 3-hole punched, which was that was common back in the day. And sometimes the books came that way, and if they didn't, a lot of collectors used to purposely do it to put them in binders. So now sometimes if you're trying to go on the collector's market, sometimes you'll find them like punched or not punched. And this was nice. I got the sheet. It still has the questionnaire thing that's in it.
Oh, so this is a questionnaire for about like you to give feedback about the game.
Yeah, and
like
you can see
quality of the components used in game: excellent, adequate, or poor.
Cool, right? Like you can see on the back.
Attractiveness of game box.
TSR Hobbies, PO Box, in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is
Geneva.
And Lake Geneva is why Gen Con is one of the biggest. You've probably heard of Gen Con.
Yeah.
Lake Geneva, it's Gen Con.
Huh.
Because that's where Dungeons and Dragons was born.
Would you like to read Dragon Magazine about Dungeons and Dragons games and other adventures?
I didn't personally own this set when I was young, but when I first learned the game and I first played, and shout out to the Johnsons, they were the ones who introduced me to the game.
The Johnsons.
The Johnsons. And you know, we were in the 80s. We were introduced to the game by I don't know if I want to give their first names just for. Don't know that they want to be put out there like that, but their father introduced us to the game. He learned to play Dungeons and Dragons while serving in Vietnam.
Oh, jeez.
So he used to play Dungeons and Dragons in Vietnam. The game somehow got over there, and he learned it, and he brought it back and introduced his sons to it.
That's pretty interesting.
And they were military kids.
Yeah.
I grew up in a town that was a military town. And so they were military kids, and I grew up playing it at their house, and I learned from these sets.
So if it wasn't for the Vietnam War, you may have never got into Dungeons and Dragons.
That's potentially true.
I mean, which is
probably not actually true because because I was such a fantasy geek, I would have found it one way or the other. But yes.
But in this timeline,
yeah, it came to me through the Vietnam War.
By the way, it's almost 100 degrees outside today.
It is brutal, which is why we're outdoors.
Yeah.
The attic, you can't even step foot up there. It's terrible. So the sets that I own are sometimes they're either called the Menser sets, based on the name Frank Menser, who's the guy who wrote and designed the sets.
Okay.
Or BECME, which stands for, it's an acronym for Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, Immortals.
Why were they doing that?
Okay, so the way it worked was, when after these sets had come out a couple of years later, they decided to revise the sets to make them easier for people to like learn. They wanted to rewrite the rules. Like the rules themselves are still basically the same, but it was just a reorganization so that they're easier to pick up, easier to learn, so that the design was more attractive, so that just to make it more like approachable for people.
Okay.
Because it's you know now, especially having experienced the game, like it can be intimidating.
Yeah. Prior to me playing, I just assumed I would never figure it out, which is absurd because when you do play it, you realize that all the RPG video games that you play are based on Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So you realize I've been playing a version of D&D my whole life.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like the half the video game systems, or game systems. I don't mean consoles, but like the in-game systems that people like love and know. Come from this hit points and experience points and like all that stuff.
Yeah, leveling up, just
leveling
in general.
Up, leveling up literally came from Dungeons and Dragons. So these are the ones that I had as a kid. I do not have the 5th one in that set because I haven't been able to locate it for under like $80 yet. I do have a bid out on one right now. But I was just outbid, and it's now over the 80 mark, and I don't know that I want to spend that much.
Yeah, it's rough.
I was going to hold off for doing this for a show until I got all 5, but I was like, eh. So remember I just said like BECME, right? And that's Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, and then the I would be Immortals.
Okay. That's
a gold box. And the Immortals, a lot of people don't count it that much for reasons I'll go into in a second. So this is probably one of the most famous. But so this will look recognizable to people even who... Yeah,
that's just that for some reason I guess they always use that as the iconic.
Yeah, it's super iconic, and you can see obviously this is like a newer edition, but that's not this. So this was the initial basic set. I think this box came out in '83, and this was simple, just the Dungeons and Masters manual, the player's manual, another one of these things. Get the character sheet on the back. The way this book was structured was pretty cool, and it's one of the ways it made it easy to learn the game is that basically like this player's book was meant for you as like an individual to read and play through on your own.
Oh, really?
There's an adventure in here that you play through by yourself.
Huh.
And basically just shows you, and it's a simple like straight ahead adventure. It's basically like a choose your own adventure thing. that shows you the ropes, shows you how the game works.
Is that the first time they did that with that edition?
Yes. This covered character levels 4 through 14.
Just real quick, I like the blue better than even though the red is like the iconic one.
I
kind of like the blue better.
I always liked this one.
I guess it's more eye-catching because it's red. But,
the amazing, the cover art for all these was awesome. Larry Elmore, and I love his stuff. And this always came with my favorite module ever, the Isle of Dread, which actually we just talked about. An earlier version of the Isle of Dread was in the original Xbox.
Oh, okay.
But this was to give you an adventure to have with it, because otherwise the only thing it came with was just the full expert rule book.
Okay.
But like with each new rule set, it was just sort of expanding, like
tweaking things here and there that maybe didn't work real good, or
fixing what you could do, like fixing things or expanding what you could do, adding new rules. Of course, with higher level characters, it's adding like new spells and new magic items and new monsters. Like there's new monsters in here. There's like higher level monsters, new treasures. And giving you the rules on like how to advance your characters to new levels, and then here, this is where like it introduced what was at the time known as the known world. So it was like giving you a pre-made game world. Shortly after the expert set came out,
I like that one too.
Then the companion rules came out. This was for character levels 15 through 25.
Jeez. Oh, so okay, so this is like you and friends have been playing for a while, and you've leveled up to 15 or whatever, and then this comes out and throws a little bit more at you to keep it like
to keep you going. And what the companion rules were really interesting because this added, and so this has a player's companion and a dungeon master's companion, and again this still have the insert sheet. This one for the role-playing game association.
Oh my God.
That you could join, which I think they might still be around. This particular box is beat to shit, but I bought it.
Still,
I bought it because the companion set goes for more than some of these other sets, because like basically there's a ton of basic sets out there. There's a good amount. There's a large amount of expert sets out there, but as each progressive set came out, there were fewer of them out there. So
yeah, you're getting what you can get.
So I got this one because the cost was lower. I am going to upgrade it at some point, figuring that I can get a better copy and then sell this one.
Like it says, the RPGA Network is an international organization of gaming enthusiasts dedicated to excellence in role-playing games.
Yes.
If you're looking for gamers who share your interest in TSR, role-playing games, and if you want to know more about what's coming from TSR Incorporated, join the RPG Network.
Pre-internet, man, that's how we did it.
Seriously.
Like fanzines and stuff, like that's how you connected with people.
As a member of the network, you will receive an attractive RPGA Network pin.
Nice.
A membership certificate suitable for framing.
Did you get a subscription to Polyhedron?
A 1-year subscription to Polyhedron. And the opportunity to attend and even run official RPGA Network tournaments at local conventions and be recognized for your talents worldwide.
Nice. Recognized for your talents. Yeah, now these rules, I always found these rules were really cool. Never used a lot of these rules because honestly we rarely got to this high level.
Right.
And I think Dungeons & Dragons is a lot more fun at lower levels. The rules that they introduce here are really cool. I like the rules, but we just didn't use them a lot because some of the rules that are in here are about, like, by the time you get to this level, your characters are basically having their own kingdoms.
Oh, jeez.
So a lot of the rules in here are about, like, how to manage your castle, how to like hire your armies and like supply them, and it's like about rulership and stuff like that. Like when you start to get to this level, it's like high level stuff. Like
it starts to go from like the Sim game to Sim City.
Yeah. Like
that kind of thing.
Yeah, very much so.
You're like managing like cities instead of a person.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of that, like, and then in here, like if you're a wizard character, this is the point of the game where you start, like, you become the wizard who has their tower, and you're spending your time, like, creating your own magic items and researching spells, and, like, it's a different game.
Yeah.
It becomes a different game if you're playing that way. And then after the companion rules, this one took me a while to get at a price I was willing to pay. And even the price I was willing to pay, I don't even want to say. It was under 80. I did spend under $80 for this, though. This is for character levels 26 to 36.
Jesus Christ.
And at this point, see, it's same thing. There's a player's book, a master's book, and it has the sheet. And this I'm really happy with the
quality of them.
Of like the condition. Like this is in great shape.
Probably because most people didn't use it, right?
Yeah. So yeah, at this point you can even see from the cover because he's riding a dragon. At this point, you're not just like a dude with like a castle. You run entire kingdoms. Jesus. And like the adventures at this point, and that's what the rules are here, are like world-shaping events where you're fighting gods and stuff like that.
But so how does that work if there's three? Say there's like 3 of you playing in a DM, so there's 4 total. Okay, and you're at the point where 3 of you are at the point where you have your own kingdom.
That's a good question.
Like, how the f is that happening?
I'll confess, even though I owned this, and I own it again now, never did we play to this level ever. And I don't think that's
Yeah, like at that point, you're just a manager.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think this was the set that introduced to weapon proficiencies, which was something that so-called advanced Dungeons and Dragons never had, and that was the idea that like you had to train in specific weapons to get better at them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so and that kind of stuff. But yeah, this was like uber high level stuff. That was like world spanning, world shaping, world changing.
Which I guess
kind of stuff.
I'm sure there are people that are into that and love that aspect of it. I'm sure.
There's got to be.
But that seems like it seems like when you get to that level, it goes back to the original idea before it became D&D. It's going back into like the chainmail. Because
there are like rules in here like how to fight wars, like large scale wars, all that stuff. And then the set that came after this, which I'm still trying to track down, I just haven't been able to locate it for a price I'm willing to pay, is the Immortal Set. And that was one, again, I owned it, but even after I read the rules, I was like, who would play this? The rules completely changed because at that point, the level cap in original basic D&D was levels 36. I think now it's 20. After you've reached level 36, the only place to go from there was that basically your characters attained immortality and became demigods.
Oh my god.
And so the immortal rules were like playing as demigods. So you were like in like other planes of existence, like going against gods and having these like universe reshaping adventures. Yeah, like so years ago.
I would love to know if there's anybody out there that actually played at that level.
I'd be curious too. Like I've never met or talked to anyone who actually played the Immortal rules, and there were like adventures for it and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah. When I got rid of these sets, the one thing I held on to, and this is still my original, and I will always know because it has this one scar on it. I got rid of those 4 sets because what they did, and this came out near the end of the run of basic D&D. I want to say this was 1991, exactly as I remember. That's what I was going to say. This is all 4 of those boxes.
Oh, really? They just condensed. Okay, so they just finally came out with a book, so you didn't have to.
Yeah. So rather than like, basically, it condenses all this stuff down into one set of rules. This does not include the Immortal rules, but it has all the others. And so yeah, it gets all the rules condensed into one rules encyclopedia.
Encyclopedia.
So this is the one that I held on to for, like I said, this is my original I bought in 91. And this is the one look at, like, D&D used to be heavy with charts. Heavy with charts. So I held on to this one because I was like, if I ever want to play this version again, I have all the rules in one place. Now this original book is now actually really collectible. And this goes on eBay like for $100 plus. Jeez. 100 to like, sometimes more. However, for anyone who's interested, like, I actually really love this old system of D&D, the BECME or Basic Expert Rules. I think there's a lot of ways in which it's superior to the current editions. But if people want this, you can actually go to DriveThruRPG and get reprint versions, official reprint versions, cool, for like $15 or something like that, in a nice like hardcover or softcover. The main important thing is I'm just super happy to like have these in my life again. Even knowing I'm not necessarily going to play these, I just love paging through them again.
Yeah.
Looking at the art, reading the rules, remembering the rules, and sometimes like it sparks ideas and all that.
Right.
But even if it doesn't, it's just really enjoyable to read them again.
Yeah, we've had the conversation about those very specific couple things from your childhood that like you want, like you kind of like feel like you need them in some way, even if you might never use them.
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
just sort of there as a touchstone, I guess, in a way.
like so many people, I mean, I cut my teeth as a writer through this.
Right.
The first novel I ever completed, with which no one will ever read because it's terrible. But the first novel I ever completed was like based on a D&D campaign that we played. I've written a lot of fiction in the game world that I created, like when we were playing these.
Yeah.
So like it's part of me. It's tied up in the things that I've done all the years since. Like, you know, when it comes to writing and creating and world building and all that sort of stuff. So like I'm like, yeah, I got him again. Oh, I got him again. So yeah, it's, you know, it's super cool. It brings back some like great memories. Even though I spent more money than I should getting them again, look.
Yeah, sometimes you don't.
The world is going to hell. I'm going out happy. Damn it. These I picked up specifically for nostalgic reasons. But you know, there's a renaissance. There's a whole movement, a whole scene based around recreating these old rules and playing by them. That's thriving right now, because what happens when so this is all from TSR. TSR, it no longer exists. Dungeons and Dragons was bought by Wizards of the Coast.
Okay.
The folks who made Magic the Gathering. So now everything now is Wizards of the Coast. You can split this D&D up into like the TSR era and the Wizards of the Coast era. And when 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons came out, they put out something called the OGL, the Open Gaming License. And basically it was like a stripped down version of the rules that Wizards of the Coast was like, you can adapt this however you want and put out your own products.
Okay.
And that's why now there's all these like third-party books that you can get.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard of the game Pathfinder.
Oh, no.
Pathfinder is basically like an independent D&D.
Okay.
It's like they took that open gaming license and they did their own splinter version of the game. If you know how to play D&D, like you kind of are already halfway towards knowing how to play Pathfinder. But some really creative people realized that because of the way the OGL was structured, they could basically recreate these rules practically exactly and release them as commercial products now.
Okay.
So there are now like old school rules but new products that like present them in a easier to learn fashion. And the one in particular is what is a really good one? Because there's quite a few. There's Labyrinth Lord and a few others. I think it's not Dungeon Crawl Classics. I don't know. I'll tell you later and you can pop it up. But you can get like a nice box set that like has all the different rules and stuff like that.
And it says Dungeons and Dragons on it? On
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
They're not allowed to use the Dungeons and Dragons name.
But they can use all the rules.
But it's the same rules. So with those sets, not only can you buy a new set and play by those old school rules, which I endorse. These rules are great. I think in a lot of ways I still like them more than I like the newer rules. But those rules, there are all sorts of brand new books and supplements that you can get and use with the game. Plus, they're compatible with all the old shit. And a lot of this old shit is available again,
right,
through print on demand through DriveThruRPG or DMsGuild.com, where you can get like the original adventures reprint versions for like PDFs for like $6, $5-6,
nice.
Or like printed, like fully reprinted in print copies for like as low as like $9 a copy.
Huh.
And they look. I have one of them upstairs because I wanted to see how good the quality was, and the quality's great.
Huh.
So it's really cool. Like if somebody is interested in these older versions of the rules, which are a lot less cumbersome and a lot more flexible, I think you can do that now today. You could like begin playing these old school rules without having to spend all the money on this shit.
Right.
And it's compatible with like new stuff and old stuff.
That's pretty cool.
It's really cool. Like it's kind of like backwards compatibility with video games, you know. So I think that's pretty rad. So there you go. I want to share this stuff with people because I'm so excited.
So excited.
The Great Purge is over. It's not actually over.
Purge is over.
In our next episode, we'll talk about some things where I still can't re-get what I used to have.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. So that was it. Here's our first in-person episode in 6 months.
Yeah.
Is it 6 months? Bye. Oh.